Bakugo's last fight against All for One is well underway at the start of the most recent episode of My Hero Academia. During the battle, All for One gets lost in his past when he sees the frightening image of his past in Bakugo's eyes. The anime seems to overlook a few aspects of All for One's backstory from the manga, but they aren't significant enough to ruin the tale. The excellent action of another great episode for the last season of My Hero Academia, or Kohei Horikoshi's compelling narrative. The sad history of All for One is revealed at the very beginning of My Hero Academia Season 8, Episode 4. It tells the truth about All for One's history, from his mother's sad existence to the time he phoned Yoichi as his younger brother attempted to flee. The tale is sincere and told through stunning cinematography, but the anime loses something because of the missing details from the manga that add depth to this background. The anime, for example, fails to clarify that All for One's mother was unaware of her pregnancy since All for One was using his talent to deplete all of her energy. She wasn't a negligent mother who drank during her pregnancy, despite how it may appear. Consequently, one might even infer from the scenario that All for One intentionally murdered his mother, something that was never suggested in the manga. Despite how wicked he was, the anime portrays All for One as an inherent evil, whereas the manga version is still completely irredeemable. Which misses the point of his character. Even more of the tragedy that made All for One's tale in the manga sad is lost in the anime's subtitle translation. In the manga's original English translation, the backstory of All for One is described. From the moment of his birth, the youngster was filled with pride and disrespect for others. He saw all those who would look at him when he wept and screamed, those who would refuse to give him his own belongings, those within his grasp. He was suspicious of everything. The anime, on the other hand, employs a more straightforward and direct narration, that baby was arrogant from birth. He was the owner of all that surrounded him, and he became suspicious of anybody who wouldn't look at him or offer him anything, even if he was crying. Although it's shorter and more straightforward than the manga's soliloquy, it still leaves out important details by condensing the plot, even if only little. For instance, the first line, which states that All for One was imbued with hubris and disrespect for others from the moment of his birth, emphasizes this. That external forces, including his birth circumstances, imposed All for One's faults on him. The tragedy he was born into and his oddity caused these things, they were outside of his control. In contrast, the anime uses the more forceful phrase that baby was arrogant from birth, which suggests that his hubris was a personality. A fault rather than a miserable consequence of his existence. Additionally, the anime narrators claim that his suspicion was sparked by anyone who wouldn't look his way or give him anything despite his bawling has a completely different meaning. Those who would turn to look at him when he cried and screamed, those who wouldn't provide him with anything, he viewed with utter distrust, which is a different tone than the manga's. The manga makes the point that this helpless, miserable infant was ignored by everyone, which caused him to lose faith in everyone. Conversely, the anime implies that All for One was simply wary of individuals who refused to help him out of sheer haughtiness. In My Hero Academia Episode Season 8, Episode 4, the tone changes significantly with only a few minor word changes, which are lost. Something important concerning All for One's personality. This infant was neglected by the world, just like Shigaraki, and no one would pay attention to him because of his peculiarity. By the time he was a young kid, this had driven him farther towards wickedness, making him an irreparable monster. But the anime portrays All for One as being fundamentally more evil, which further reduces the sympathy one has for him. Because My Hero Academia is genuinely all about illustrating the childlike innocence in everyone, this poses a problem for the show. A question of whether others are willing to see it. Midoriya's heroism stems from his ability to see the childlike innocence in everyone and his conviction that no one is inherently wicked. With its little changes to All for One's tale, the anime challenges that premise. The manga's interpretation of the narrative wasn't flawless, but it was certainly more mindful of its own topics. Even in the anime, All for One's persona is still tragic, particularly because he was left to fend for himself at such a young age. Even if its birth was tragic, the modifications to its language detract from the tragedy. The anime fortunately redeems itself with the conclusion of All for One's tale, and Bakugo's major victory. By the time, despite All for One's defeat, the anime does at least acknowledge a key element of All for One that was missing from that early history. Namely, the reality that he was never seen. The fact that other people couldn't see him is what caused his life to deteriorate so drastically, and it's the only thing he rightly asks for. During his last moments in the episode. In All for One's history, there is a lovely parallel to the notion of being seen, which is also essential to comprehending his character, and this episode brings it all together. In the narrator's backstory, he states that All for One's eyes lacked a natural luster, which meant there was no reflection of himself in them when he looked at them. All for One's eyes were the focus of Kudo's gaze. This absence of Kudo's reflection in All for One's eyes, which represents his inability to see others because he is not seen by them, demonstrates this. In the previous episode, Bakugo famously proclaimed, "I'm the final boss, all for one," which is one of his most recognizable statements. In the fourth episode of My Hero Academia. In episode 4, Kaken Bakugo truly establishes that he is the last boss, at least as far as All for One is concerned. Regardless of All for One's prying into the subject, the fact is that Bakugo is not immediately related to Kudo by blood. Nevertheless, he did acquire Kudo's unwavering will, which causes All for One to experience a trauma response. Bakugo is willing to boldly stand up for what is right, even against all odds. Much like Kudo, it also helps that their eye shapes and hairstyles are similar. At last, in yet another breathtaking final battle, Bakugo puts All for One to rest. It is undoubtedly gratifying to see Bakugo, even though Shigaraki now holds the title of biggest threat, of course, at last win the battle against the main antagonist of the entire series thus far. Bakugo's journey has been magnificent in retrospect, and it has come to an end along with that of All for One. Despite the issues with the plot, My Hero Academia Season 8, Episode 4 serves as a strong conclusion to the All for One narrative. Not that it matters, the series continues to provide the greatest action and most sincere narrative of any shonen airing during the fall anime season. Shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Even if it's amazing to see Bakugo come out on top, and as thrilling as the move to the real last fight between Izuku and Shigaraki might be, it's a mixed blessing to realize that Kaken Bakugo, MHA's most dynamic protagonist, is once again out of action. You're seen, Bakugo. Hope you like this video. Stay tuned in this channel for latest upcoming updates on this series. And add a bookmark in this channel for further upcoming updates on movies, anime, and web series. Thanks for watching this video. If you like this video, please like, comment, and share our channel. And for latest updates, please subscribe our channel and press the bell icon.